It's been over a week now since we first learned about the HasLab Victory Saber, aka Star Saber, and Victory Leo from Hasbro and Hasbro Pulse. The backing system is seems to be doing very well, and now we finally have some decent images of the actual resin prototypes. And what's good about these is because up to this point, we never really had a clear indication of how big the standalone Star Saber was. We had all these other measurements, like how big Victory Leo is and other stuff, but we didn't know how big Star Saber was because he's the main beefy component of this, and not to mention the character that has many different releases throughout the years that then we could measure against his previous ones, the Masterpiece, the original toy, the Robot Master, etc. So what's cool about this is we got a whole bunch of images. It showed, the small saber mode. It showed how the Brain Master gimmick works. It showed Victory Saber, the alt modes, the combined modes, side by sides, which is very key, which I'll get into in a moment, and some little things here and there. Now, I want you guys to keep in mind, and I've talked about this in the past, resin prototypes look absolutely spectacular all the time. And I don't want to sound like a downer with this, but it's just something I want to point out there. Resin prototypes always look spectacular. The use of gray always makes detail pop way more. And I really hope, granted, this is a character that I'm pretty sure is not going to be too many surprises in terms of the color scheme, but I really hope that when this figure is colored in, that those details don't disappear. I'm always reminded of when we first learned about, and this is going to date myself, but literally 20 years ago when we were first shown Armada Overload, we were shown a resin prototype of him, and we all thought it was just the coolest thing we had ever seen. The details on him popped like crazy. Obviously, when he was then painted in that red and black, a lot of that really washed out, and of course molded in color plastic too. So just keep that in mind too. These look spectacular right now in terms of their resin prototypes, but also any flaws that you might see in terms of, like, let's say those little holes that could be used for weaponizers and stuff, those also might get washed out, and those could be seen as negatives that could then be seen as a positive when it comes to stuff going from resin to molded in color plastic, ABS, AMBS, or whatever plastic they're going to use. So just keep that in mind. Now we'll start with the robot mode of Star Saber, the smaller robot mode called Saber. And we are shown pretty much how the Brain Master gimmick is going to work, how his saber blade hilt is going to attach to that mode, because in the original toy, it attached as pretty much a shield for his shoulder, but also doubled as a sword that he could hold. Chances are, judging by the universal 3mm peg of the fist of Saber, he probably still can hold that giant sword and kind of have a representation of that. Although it's a shame that so far from what it looks like, rumor has it that it might be one of the backer goals, but he doesn't have his smaller representation of the mini saber blade that the Masterpiece had. This is something more similar to what existed with the original toy from 1990 and 89. So pretty, it's just something to mention there. Also, it rides a little higher on the shoulder than the original. So they show pretty much how the Brain Master gimmick works. It doesn't work in the traditional sense of Brain Masters. Brain Masters had a transformation element to them. You put them in the chest, you close the chest activates a gimmick, which in the original toy, the Brain Master's face, if you will, the brain was in the robot, the mini robot itself, which then transformed into the face. In the case of the Masterpiece, it was, by closing the chest, you activated a gimmick which pushed up I guess an artificial face into Saber. In this case, it's more of a Headmaster-esque kind of transformation, and what I mean by that is you just got to transform the Brain Master in a specific way prior to putting it inside Saber's chest, and then that's just it. So it's kind of sad that I guess activation gimmick is no longer present. The classic, brain set, close the chest, boom, big reveal. So I guess that's one thing that kind of sucks. But again, I think it also is tied into to keep the articulation in the neck, because the big selling point here is that it has a turning neck in the Saber mode, which, I mean, hey, that's cool. He has articulation in the neck, and they figured out a way to do that by hindering and sacrificing some of the Brainmaster gimmick. But the flip side of it is, and it's something I've said many years ago with a lot of times when you get figures that have like a billion hands and a billion this and a billion that, what are we going to have this displayed in? Very strong chance we're going to either have it in Victory Saber mode or Star Saber mode with Victory Leo separately. Probably not going to have it in Saber mode. So that extra articulation to the neck, while probably welcomed by some people and photographers, probably won't see a lot of action for a lot of people. It's a nice addition, don't get me wrong, but also something that's like, waist swivel could have also turned the head of the character in a lot of ways, if you know what I mean. But that's it more or less for that. I mean, he has his traditional gun, which also is mounted on top of the V-Star, so that's usually how this character was depicted in this design, was most of the time with a smaller sword, which, again, as of this recording, we don't know if that'll be something involved with it in the future. The gun weapon, if I remember correctly, one episode with the smaller Saber version. This version of the character really was an interaction character. If he was in the smaller Saber mode, it was more so just to talk to the other Autobots on a eye level in a lot of ways, the other Brainmasters and so on and so forth. So that's all I could really say about that. When we get to the Star Saber mode, hey, look, it looks fantastic. I can't argue with how it looks, and from the fact that now we know how tall it is next to Victory Leo, aka him being 9.5 inches, for people who own, let's say, Overlord from the Titans Return, that's a 9.5 inch leader class figure, so that'll kind of give you an idea of how big he will be in person. It works. And the same thing if you compare, I don't expect people to have this figure, but if you have the Legends Diatlas from the Takara Tomy side of things, he scales well with that, and those are two characters that really should be, I guess, eye to eye in a lot of ways. They're both huge Autobot leaders, or supreme commanders, as the Japanese call them. He looks great. Star Saber sword's a little tiny on the blade, but I mean, can't complain too much about it. Still not confirmed if he has the Saber blade reveal gimmick, meaning he stores the Saber blade in his backpack and then he takes the hilt. He swings it back behind him like pulling a blade out of a hilt on a back. Some people are saying it doesn't seem like it's possible because the backpack doesn't look like it could store the whole blade, combined with how the backpack works with the gimmick for the V-Star this time around for articulation. I hope that it's able to do it. That's always been a really cool thing about the character. Even the Robot Master, which is like a $10 small little figure, somehow manages to pull it off in its own little chintzy kind of way, I guess is the best way to put it. But it looks great in robot mode. Don't get me wrong, it looks great in robot mode and everything like that. When we get to the V-Star mode itself, like the actual combined Saber with his air trailer, this is where, like, again, I'm really hoping that the gray prototype, resin prototype details get washed out, because he has tons and tons of holes on top of him, be it screw holes or, the gimmick to put guns and weapons everywhere. Man, that's a lot. It's very jarring to the vision. I understand not a lot of people are going to have this displayed in this mode anyways, but considering that the original toy and the Masterpiece found the right balance of where to put the screw holes and stuff, and you didn't have that so blatantly available on the alt mode, I don't know. Maybe, again, the flip side of the argument is this is all supposed to be, for weaponizers and little things like that. Fossilizers, if you want to attach fossilizers to it and stuff. But, it adds to that, too, if you want to, plug in some guns and everything everywhere. So maybe that. But, I mean, it does the job. I think that maybe they could have done a better job of hiding the Star Saber Super Mode head on top. I think it doesn't tuck away as well as some previous versions, including even the Robot Master. But otherwise, it does its job. I think it's fine and everything like that. Now, when we get to his partner here, Victory Leo. Now, Victory Leo, I mean, he looks great. He looks great. There's not much more I could say. It's a much more simplified design, so there's not much really it has to do better than the first time around. The one thing that's absent from these photos that I wish we got a better shot of, and we could kind of see it a little bit with the combined jet mode though, is I want to see more of the Victory Leo lion head, because some people were criticizing the molding of it. Obviously, we can't see it properly here. There's some angles that kind of give us an idea, but not well enough. But again, I don't think we're going to have it displayed like that anyways. He's going to be a robot mode or a combined mode when it's all said and done. It sucks that they're showing him there with the V-Lock cannon, because are we going to get it? You know, that's such a key component. So we'll see what happens with that. But he looks good otherwise. And then, of course, we have the combined mode, which confirms that they went with a much more thicker kind of Victory Saber boots this time around. Previous versions of Victory Saber kind of went with more of a more compact folded Victory Leo in terms of how his boots were done. So they made it a little thicker. So that's definitely going to add some height there. I'm estimating probably he's going to be just slightly shorter than, let's say, Commander class Jetfire at 13.5 inches. Maybe he'll be 12 inches. Obviously, if you count, you know, depending on how you angle his V-Star cannons and stuff from Victory Leo. We shall see. We shall see. But I really hope it gets that V-Star cannon, because that would be kind of silly otherwise. Now, supposedly, this prototype is going to be in person for everyone to see at the Fan Expo Boston, which starts today as of this recording, September 3rd, and will be there until September 5th at the end of this weekend. So if this show is happening, I don't know, the world is in such a crazy place right now, you could check it out in person, and maybe we'll get some better images from different angles and stuff. Hopefully we'll learn more, maybe even before our stream will come up tomorrow. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Now, as of this recording, I'm actually going to hit the refresh button right now. As of this recording, of the 11,000 that's needed for this backing, there's 5,502 that have backed it. So pretty much, you know, it's hit now that halfway point. The halfway point has been hit, and there's still 37 days left. So if you average it out, if they get at least, let's quick Proto Man math here, 146, 47 people a day, they'll be able to back this, because it looks like on average, it looks like they get about 150 people a day anyways. So that's the case. But, and this is a big but here, giggity. The big but is, will we then clear enough for, let's say, the V-Lock cannon? That's where it'd be like, man, that would really suck if we don't get that, because that's a very big visual key component to the Victory Saber look, is having that big cannon there. So I feel like, judging by the momentum we have right now, yeah, for sure we're going to clear that 11,000. But will we then get that extra chunk afterwards? Because then after that 11,000, you need another, 3,000 to make that happen. Another over $500,000 to make that happen. So that's going to be a tough one. And considering the fact that, like I said, this is when you really combine everything, it's a Voyager and a Leader class that combine to make something that's pretty much a Commander with a whole bunch of accessories that I feel like, pound for pound with the plastic, this is a Commander class toy. But a Commander class toy is not $179. So that's my only big complaint. That's my complaint that I've had since the beginning, is I feel it's not priced right. And that then leads to my fear that, this might hit the backing goal. It'll hit it. I get a feeling, like if I had to guess, it's going to hit it. But will it hit the tier 1 unlock, which is the little extra accessories of the 2 little blast effects and the V-Lock cannon, which, I mean, if we don't get that V-Lock cannon, come on, man. And I almost feel like the other 2 tier goals, the 17,000 and the 20,000. I mean, I want to be wrong, but I don't even think those are considerable. which was kind of sucks because I really worry that, like, you know, that 17 and 20, that's going to be the mini saber, that's going to be the shield, that's going to be the stand for the jet mode. It's going to be some extra that would have been really cool to have, but I don't feel we're going to get that. I really don't. Unless there's, again, like a typical Unicron situation where literally the day after it ends, millions of, like, well, not millions, but like thousands of backers just kind of came out of nowhere. Whether they be artificial or international, we do not know. The jury is still out on that one, but that the case. So let's see what happens. There's still 37 days left in this. It'll probably clear, but I hope we get the other stuff too. I haven't gotten mine yet. I'm kind of sitting back and just going like, let's see how this turns out. Because it would really suck to not get that V-Lock cannon. That's a big visual component, because if I do pick this up, I already know how I'm going to have this on display. It's going to be in the Victory Saber mode. Every single Star Saber that I've had up to this point, with the exception of like the PVCs and everything, the Mega PVC collection, I've always had like individual and then combined together. Always had like 2 sets of it. I'm obviously not going to get 2 sets of this, but it's something that I'm going to want to have the Victory Saber mode on display because it's probably going to look very impressive and chunky. But if it doesn't have that V-Lock cannon, that's going to be weird. That's like releasing a Star Saber figure and not having a Star Saber sword. It's kind of like when we look back all the way to Super Link and Energon, how when the Wing Saber character came out, which Wing Saber was intended to be that spiritual Star Saber character, and during his development stage was going to have a sword. The fact that he didn't have one in the end and didn't use one in the show kind of hurt his legacy in the long run, because I feel like if you know, you could take your Star Saber blade, the Energon Saber from Energon even, and, you know, put it in the hand of that character, but, you know, it wasn't associated with that character. And it's the same thing. Imagine if we had a Star Saber toy and it didn't have the sword, and if we had a Victory Saber without the V-Lock cannon. I don't know. That's just my take. Let me know what you think. It's just nice to see these prototype images instead of just the CG mock-ups. So now we have a better idea of it. I'm still, you know, hot and cold on this because of the price. If this was a retail product at the Commander class price that it should have been, this would have been no question. No question whatsoever. They would have done a fantastic job here, much like they did with Jetfire. I think Jetfire was a fantastic Commander class. I think that Skylynx was a fantastic Commander class, especially working with that modulator gimmick and the bases and everything. And, I mean, it's going to be a bias, but I think that the Commander class Rodimus is fantastic too. So those ones really made their money's worth of their price points. This is something where I don't see $179.99, but I definitely see a Commander class price point, which is what I feel it probably really should have been in a lot of ways. But it is what it is. It can't be helped. This is how we're getting it. This is the way they're pulling the trigger. So let's see what happens in the near future. And we got a stream tomorrow, so I hope to see you there, and maybe we'll get some updates on this.